Hey there, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the deep end of evaluating excellence. We're talking standards, testing, and the real cost of mastery. We're going to look at what it actually takes to reach the absolute top of your game, and we're kicking things off with a very specific number.
$36,000. Now, what do you think that represents? A solid down payment on a house? Maybe a brand new car? Or, I don't know, a year of college tuition? It's a pretty striking figure, right? Well, what this money actually buys in the context of our discussion today might completely flip how you view the true price of perfection. Which brings us right to the core question driving this explainer. What does it really cost to reach the next level? And look, I'm not just talking about the financial cost, though, yeah, that is incredibly significant. I'm talking about the immense systemic investments, the massive amounts of time, the emotional toll, and the structural support you need to achieve truly high standards. Because whether you're a student sitting at a desk or a musician standing on a stage, leveling up, it is never free, and it's rarely easy.
So let's start at the macro level, looking at the whole system. Back in the early 2000s, a massive K-12 academic standards movement basically swept across the United States. You can read all about it in reports like Taking a Second Look at Standards. Now, the goal here was actually noble and very ambitious. Elevate student performance nationwide so U.S. schools could outscore their international peers. The idea sounds super simple in theory, right? Just set high benchmarks for what kids should know at each grade level. But implementing that theory, wow, that's where things got incredibly, unbelievably complicated.
Because, setting a standard is one thing. Actually reaching it is a whole different ballgame. Almost overnight, educators found themselves squarely on the hot seat. Demands for accountability popped up literally the second these new state-level standards came hot off the copy machine. And what this created was a massive unfunded mandate. Teachers and principals were suddenly hit with these incredibly high stakes. We're talking raises, promotions, even school closures, all tied directly to test results. But here's the kicker. They had low support. They received very little training on these new standards and practically zero new resources to help the kids succeed. So, sky-high stakes, but the safety net just wasn't there.
So, to try and bring some kind of order to this chaos, independent organizations like Achieve Inc. and Merkrell stepped in. They came up with these 5 crucial dimensions to rigorously evaluate standardized tests. First, you've got the blueprint. Does a test question actually map to a specific standard? Second is content centrality. Is the question genuinely matching the standard's core content? From there, we hit performance centrality, basically asking if the type of task actually matches the standard. Then comes challenge. Is it appropriately difficult for that specific grade level without relying on trick questions? And finally, balance. Are all the big important concepts being emphasized fairly? Now, on paper, this was the ideal approach, a perfectly logical progression to make sure tests interacted meaningfully with actual classroom instruction. But as you can probably guess, the reality of rolling these tests out was messy. Really messy. When you introduce rigorous evaluation that quickly, the pushback is intense. Failure rates on those early tests just skyrocketed. It got so bad that Arizona State Representative John Huppenball literally called the situation a train wreck. And you can see why. Nearly 85% of students flunked the math exam. That created this massive political nightmare where kids who were already accepted into good universities suddenly couldn't even graduate high school. States were totally rattled, and a lot of them furiously backpedaled, delaying exams or just quietly lowering the passing grades. And the pushback wasn't just coming from politicians scrambling to fix graduation rates. The emotional toll of this kind of systemic evaluation was just profound. Parents were literally taking to the streets, holding up signs reading, "Children are more than test scores," because there was this huge, glaring disconnect. Educators wanted to evoke rich, complex learning, but these standardized, multiple-choice exams were just measuring superficial rote memorization. It turned into a battle of numbers. Kids were getting sick to their stomachs on test days. It really led a lot of people to feel like the very soul of education was on the chopping block. Okay, let's completely shift our perspective for a minute. We've just seen the rigid, systemic measurements of success, right? The standardized tests, the multiple choice bubbles, those strict cutoffs. But what happens when we compare that to artistic standards? In the world of classical music, excellence isn't graded by some machine scanner. It's measured by the depth of a note's tone, the flawless execution of wildly difficult technical showpieces, and this deeply subjective personal resonance. The pursuit of excellence there is absolutely just as rigorous, but the yardstick, it's completely different. To really wrap our heads around this artistic pursuit of excellence, let me introduce you to Karolina Protsenko. She's a 15-year-old violinist, and she is actively navigating her very own personal evaluation of excellence right now. She has already found a massive success playing pop songs and street performing, but lately she's been leveling up her classical training. And to reach that true, professional next standard, she quickly realized her current tools just aren't going to cut it anymore. So she's on this quest to find an instrument that produces what she describes as a truly heavenly sound. So how exactly do you evaluate a tool of excellence in this world? Well, the metrics for a violin's value are highly specific, and they're deeply qualitative. A lot of it depends on the maker. For instance, Karolina is currently testing out a brand new custom-crafted violin by master luthier Eric Benning. But it also depends on the age of the instrument, its history, even the previous players who owned it. And there is this incredible, really surprising truth in the violin world. An instrument actually goes up in price, and its sound deepens and improves the more it is played over the years. It's literally a living, breathing metric of quality. And data from the LA Violin Shop perfectly illustrates the financial reality behind those qualitative metrics. We can see these stark, distinct tiers of investment required to hit specific standards. A basic student outfit might run you under $1,000, but as you climb the ranks into intermediate and advanced territory, that investment jumps dramatically. To reach the professional tier, you're looking at anywhere from $25,000 to over $50,000. Hey, remember that $36,000 number from the very beginning? Yep. That is the exact price tag of the Eric Benning masterpiece Karolina's testing. That is quite literally the cost of reaching the next level. But the difference in performance, it's absolutely staggering. Karolina points out that when she was a beginner, she had this $100 violin that honestly sounded kind of plastic. Then as she grew, she upgraded to a $3,000 violin, which was fantastic for her pop music. But as her classical skills leveled up, that $3,000 instrument actually started holding her back. When she finally got her hands on the $36,000 custom masterpiece, she was completely blown away. It was infinitely easier to play, and she sounded so much better. She described the difference as going from earth to heaven. To meet a higher standard, she demanded a higher caliber tool. But wait, here is a really vital piece of the puzzle. Because in music, just like in education, success isn't just about buying the fanciest tool or passing some bubble sheet test. It is all about expert guidance. Mentorship is the ultimate yardstick here. Karolina specifically talks about a time she played with an orchestra using a world-class Carl Becker violin. But here's the thing, she didn't buy it. Her teacher, Professor Sam Fisher over at the Colburn School, generously lent it to her for the performance. Now that is a true investment in a student's excellence. It's providing the tools and the trust that they need to succeed at the exact moment they are ready for it. You know, the crucial point here is perfectly captured by a quote from Bob Chase. He was the president of the National Education Association, speaking about that whole K-12 standards movement we talked about earlier. He said, "We must insist that tests be used as a stethoscope, not a sledgehammer." And that hits the nail right on the head. Because whether we're talking about a standardized math test in a local high school or evaluating a musician's readiness for a master-level performance, the tools of evaluation should diagnose, they should support, they should help the student grow. They should never, ever be used to blindly punish or demoralize someone. And the wild part is, Karolina, at just 15 years old, intuitively understands this exact principle. Her advice to her audience is just incredibly wise and so down to earth. She says, don't invest in a really, really, really good violin when you're just starting off. She knows you have to make sure you love it first, you have to stick with it, and you need to let your own skill level grow. The tool, whether it's an incredibly expensive violin or a highly rigorous academic standard, has to perfectly match the student's current stage of development. If you force an advanced metric onto a beginner, you aren't helping them, you're just overwhelming them. So this leaves us with a critical question to ponder, really no matter what field we're looking at. As we build systems to measure success, we have to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, are we evaluating to punish or are we investing to elevate? Excellence definitely requires high standards, for sure, but it also demands incredible patience, world-class mentorship, and providing the exact right tools at the exact right time. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep pushing your own standards, and I'll see you next time.